When people talk about disturbing moments in Star Trek, the mind meld scene from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, is often brought up. In that film, Spock performs a mind meld with a Klingon, which leads to an intense and unsettling experience. It's a powerful and eerie moment that highlights the deep emotional and psychological impact of the Vulcan technique. However, what many may not realize is that Star Trek Nemesis 2002 contains a moment that arguably surpasses the disturbance of Spock's mind meld in Star Trek VI. Let's break down this chilling scene and explore why it left a lasting impact on Star Trek fans. The moment in question comes at the climax of Star Trek Nemesis, a film that is often overshadowed by its darker tone and tragic conclusion. For context, the film centers around the conflict between Captain Jean-Luc Picard and his clone, Shinzon, who is the leader of the Romulan Empire. Shinzon, like Picard, is a product of an experiment, and this twisted mirror image of Picard becomes the film's antagonist. As the movie progresses, we see Shinzon's desperation to destroy the Federation, using a weapon that could annihilate entire planets. It's a high-stakes story, but what truly elevates the film's disturbing factor is how the final confrontation plays out. Near the end of the film, Picard faces Shinzon on the Romulan flagship, the Scimitar, and a brutal confrontation ensues. In the midst of this battle, there is a deeply unsettling moment that ties into the film's themes of identity, cloning, and loss. Shinzon, who has been seeking revenge on Picard for the life he was denied, has a personal vendetta that hits far closer to home than any external enemy could. But what makes this moment in Nemesis even more disturbing than Spock's mind meld in Star Trek VI is the psychological and emotional toll it takes on Picard. In Star Trek VI, the mind meld scene with Spock is unsettling because it involves a forced connection between two minds from vastly different species, Vulcan and Klingon, that results in a shared trauma. It's a violation of privacy, and we see Spock struggling with the intense emotional experience. While it's a deeply thought-provoking scene, it doesn't have the same personal weight for the characters involved as the events in Nemesis. What makes Nemesis more disturbing is the revelation that Shinzon is not just some distant enemy, he is a literal clone of Picard. The emotional conflict is intense, as Picard has to come to terms with the fact that Shinzon represents everything he fears about his own vulnerabilities. This connection between the two characters is visceral, as Picard realizes that not only does he have to fight for the survival of the Federation, but also for his own soul. However, it's the tragic final act that truly stands out. In the film's climactic battle, the crew of the Enterprise must deal with Shinzon's attack and his nefarious plot. When the Scimitar is destroyed and Shinzon dies, Picard experiences a moment of deep regret and loss, but the true disturbing aspect comes when it's revealed that Shinzon's life was short and doomed from the start. He was always going to die prematurely, a casualty of the cloning process. This moment of realization hits Picard hard, not just because of the death of his clone, but because it underscores the tragedy of the entire situation. What's truly disturbing is how the entire situation reflects Picard's own vulnerabilities and regrets. As viewers, we realize that Shinzon wasn't just a villain, he was a lost, tragic soul who never had a chance to live a normal life. The emotional weight of having to kill a version of himself is far more psychologically taxing than any external foe. The final scene where Picard holds his own dead clone's body is a moment of profound grief that, for many, surpasses the intensity of the mind meld scene in Star Trek VI. In that film, Spock's mind meld with the Klingon feels more like a dramatic but disconnected plot device. In Nemesis, the emotional devastation is much more direct and deeply personal for Picard. In the aftermath of Shinzon's death, Picard's sadness is compounded by the fact that Shinzon was the result of a dark experiment. This adds another layer of moral complexity to the situation. Picard is left to grapple with the knowledge that a part of him was used in a cruel experiment, leading to the creation of this tragic figure. The entire narrative of Nemesis revolves around the horror of cloning and the loss of self-identity, and this makes the emotional turmoil far more disturbing than what we see in Star Trek VI. Ultimately, Star Trek Nemesis is a film that isn't often given the attention it deserves, but it contains some of the darkest, most emotional moments in the Star Trek franchise. The scene involving Shinzen's death and Picard's emotional collapse brings the theme of identity and loss to the forefront, making it a moment that hits harder than any mind meld ever could. In many ways, Nemesis took the psychological horror of Star Trek VI and made it more personal, more intimate, and ultimately, more disturbing. Fans of Star Trek will forever remember that emotional weight, making it one of the most haunting moments in the series.